Okay, we're in the middle of the halacha of tearing on Shabbos. So we're learning basically you could rip apart a bag on Shabbos that you need for Shabbos as long as you don't rip letters, and as long as you destroy the bag, you don't just separate it. You know, that could be easily fixed the way it is. Okay, so sometimes you have in like milk containers or juice containers, you have nowadays, every time you used to make it different. Now they have a round area. They have a plastic ring. There's a cap, and then you pull out the plastic ring, and then you undo the cover, and then you have the plastic ring. You pull out the plastic ring. So the question is, are you allowed to pull out the plastic ring on Shabbos? So some people say yes, some people say no. Ideally, it would be preferable if before Shabbos you make sure all those containers are open, then you don't go into the controversy. But if somebody they didn't open it before Shabbos, you are allowed to open it on Shabbos. You can pull up the ring, and it's not considered the various different halachos that may be. Now, wine bottle, like an orange juice container, they have, on the side, how do you get the stuff out? There's a cap on the side, and then underneath there's a plastic ring. So that plastic ring, if you could do it before Shabbos, is better to take it out. If not, then you're allowed to do it on Shabbos.
What about the can of the Lubavitch?
One way we'll get there. Now, bottle caps, we discussed already. There's a bottle cap that the whole bottle cap comes off. That's definitely not an issue. If there's a ring staying at the bottom, so we learned there's a machlekes, we hold that you're allowed to do it. Now, a lot of times kids have these little containers of juice, and there's a little straw, and there's a hole on top, and you stick the straw through the hole, and the kids, either in age or in mentality, drink the liquid out of the straw, right? So the question is, are you allowed to put that straw into the thing to drink on Shabbos? So if there's no letters, there's no problem, because really you're ruining the container. You're not fixing it. You're ruining it. It's destructive and it's for food. So you could stick the straw in there. But again, if there's letters there, for whatever reason there is, then you wouldn't be allowed to do it. Okay, wrappers, we said any wrappers that candy bar wrappers, small sugar, coffee, but you have to be very careful that you don't rip letters. There's a lot of times it's really a feat, F-E-A-T, to figure out how to do it. Yeah, I'll give you an example. You had, there was, I don't know why these things are, tutti cuties, okay? So sometimes it's very hard to take it apart on Shabbos. There's letters all over the place. It's very difficult to take it off on Shabbos. Or you have peanut shoes, nutty shoes, yeah? It's very difficult because you can't just separate it and where it's glued again and separate it. So basically you have to rip it, and there's letters all over the place. And if there's letters all over the place, you have to be very, very careful that you're not going to cut letters. And you can't just say, okay, I don't want to, and because it's a psikresha, if it's for sure going to happen. Usually if there's letters all over the place, inevitably it's going to happen. So that would be a problem. Now they write, let's say the freeze pop ices, I don't know why he says, but some people are machmir that you should open it before Shabbos, because when you take off the cover, but again, the way we hold it wouldn't be a problem. Okay, now you have like this: paper napkins, paper towels, tissues. Let's see if this includes toilet paper. Yeah, no, separate. Okay, what?
Some packages, I noticed the little cracker packages. The entire package itself has a design on it of these little. On
the cracker, you mean?
Not the cracker.
Or the wrapper?
The wrapper itself, on the outside, the whole thing has a bunch of little circles, for example.
So if you can cut between the circles, you're good.
Almost impossible.
If you can't, then you can't open it on Shabbos. No. What you would be allowed to do is tell the guy to open it. You can even tell him to open it. What?
Or your Sephardic people.
Or your Sephardic people. It's not true, by the way. I want to tell you something. The Sephardim quote Rabbi Vaad, and half the things, most of the things they quote from him are not true. Certain things he himself changed his mind about in later tshuvas. I'll give you an example. Riding a bike, everybody says Rabbi Vaad. Later on in Chuvitz, he said not so fast, not so easy to ride a bike on Shabbos. I mean, people are quoting. Listen, every Rav knows, every single Rav in the world knows they're misquoted. More than they're quoted correctly, they're misquoted. So, you can't say Sfardim. It's not necessarily. First, even amongst the Sfardim, there's a lot of different opinions. There's different poskim of Sfardik, that the Ashkenazim disagree. The Sfardim also disagree what you're allowed to and what you're not allowed to. Okay, so now you have like this. You're allowed to open up, again, let's say you need, you have a paper towel thing, yeah? So a package of paper towels. So you're allowed to open up the paper towel. Okay, if you destroy the bag, again, you need it for Shabbos. But there's a very big issue like this. Number one, you're allowed to use a paper towel on Shabbos. Let's say it's pre-cut. We're not getting into the cutting of it. Let's say a paper towel is pre-cut, a napkin is pre-cut. Napkin is a napkin. Now you want to use it on Shabbos. So many times, inevitably, you're going to rip it. You use it, it drips. So that's not an issue, because it's destructive and it's all part of the Shabbos needs. So that's not an issue at all. The problem is tearing paper towel. Now there's two things. You're not allowed to tear on Shabbos. And there's another thing which is called mechatech, which is tearing anything to size. To give you an example, if somebody wants to use aluminum foil on Shabbos, yeah, this used to be called silver paper, now you call it aluminum foil. And you rip off a piece. There's no letters. There's nothing on the aluminum foil, right? But you're pulling it out to the size you need, and then you cut it with the box. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos, because you're not allowed to cut anything to size on Shabbos. You cannot cut anything to size on Shabbos. So you can't even... What? Yeah, but you're pulling out the amount you want, and that's the amount you want, and therefore you're cutting it to size. It's better mechata. We'll get details more some other time.
Is it using the knife?
No.
So if I tear a little bit, pull a little bit more, and tear a little bit, so it's not actually a straight line.
No, it's not a question of a straight line. The straight line is not the problem. Here you're cutting something to size. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about paper towel, yeah? Normally when you use paper towel, you rip it. It's under perforation. You rip it. So number one, that's tearing without destroying. Because you're not destroying the paper towel, that's the paper towel. Secondly, you're measuring to size. You're taking off the piece that you want. So you wouldn't be allowed to rip paper towel on Shabbos. That's why people in religious homes, they pre-cut paper towel before Shabbos. So you don't need 10 pieces, they'll cut 10 pieces. If not, it's a problem. But you can't tear toilet paper. Toilet paper will get to it. Paper towels in the way, it's mechatech. Now, another interesting thing. Today it's not so, but in certain things it is. Years ago, when you had a box of tissues, so nowadays the tissues are interfolded. So when you pull up a tissue, you're not tearing it from another tissue. It's just interfolded. Years ago, the tissues, a lot of them were actually connected to each other. And then when you took a tissue, you actually ripped it on the perforation. It was a very slight perforation, but it was actually ripping it. And you have things like that now also, by the way. You have certain wipes that people use, whether in the bathroom or in the kitchen, wipes. A lot of time you have to check this out, because a lot of them, if you look, they're not just interfolded. They're actually connected to each other. And when you pull one out, you're actually tearing. No, these tissues are good. You don't have to. I thought you were experimenting. I thought you were going to experiment on it. No, because the bottom line is you're tearing to size, and that wouldn't be allowed.
But aluminum foil, you can just rip it?
You can't rip it from a container.
No.
You can't rip anything to size.
No, just put it in the hand.
What would that means? You're cutting it to.
It on the thing to rip it.
It doesn't matter. By hand also, you're ripping to size. You're not allowed to cut anything to size on Shabbos.
Could you do it like extra? Like an extra 5 10?
If you're not measuring, just pull it out. You're not measuring to size.
No,
You can't measure to size. If I need to cover this thing, let's say I need to cover this bowl, yeah? So I rip out, I know I'm going to rip out like this size, right? So then I wouldn't be allowed to because I'm measuring the size. If you just rip up a big, yeah, then you could. What? No, it doesn't work. It does. A blind man cannot desecrate Shabbos either, even though he doesn't see what he's doing. No, you can't. You can't.
It's not allowed to use aluminum foil or
That's why in religious homes, what they do is before Shabbos, they rip up paper towel that they need, or we'll get into same thing with bandages. But remember, again, it's an interesting thing. Some poskim say, remember we learned by the diapers, by the disposable diapers, you should undo it before Shabbos and redo it. So some people say the same thing with the Band-Aids, because when you have to take out a Band-Aid, there's a little plastic on the glue part, right, that it shouldn't stick, and then you take off. But again, we hold that that's not an issue. But again, people have to be very careful with things that rip. I mean, like these toilet papers or these wipes or things like that. You have to make sure that they don't are not connected, that you're separating one from the next.
The Band-Aid has a different issue. The packaging.
The packaging, number one, you could open it without tearing letters.
Not letters, it's glued together.
So I'm saying then you have to destroy it. You can't open it up without destroying the bag, the wrapper. Correct. You don't have to take something out of a wrapper, to tear the wrapper. You can take something out of a wrapper if you're not tearing it. But I'm saying if you're tearing the Band-Aid wrapper, you cannot take anything out of it unless if you destroy the wrapper. Now a Band-Aid is, sometimes every company is different. Sometimes the Band-Aids would be in a wrapper and it was just folded over on top. Then you unfold it, as it used to be when we were growing up. That's why many companies, but everything changes with time.
And not doing that is desecration of Shabbos.
Not doing it.
Not peeling the Band-Aid off first, or not taking, this is really what we consider a desecration.
Rabbinically,
This is what writers call losing the plot.
No, this is what Torah says is the sanctity of Shabbos that we have to keep. Sanctity of Shabbos, when people, I'll give you a simple example. When people build a house and they buy furniture, they're particular about every tiny little thing. If you build a bridge a mile long and you're off an inch, okay, or you build the foundation of a building and you're off by an inch, and people say the bridge is a mile long, what's the big deal of an inch? An inch can make it or break it. You can't say, this is the thing of construction, that you're dealing about an inch on a mile-long bridge, or you're dealing about a foot of foundation when you're talking about a 100-story building. I mean, come on. That's what it is. It's a question of...
We're not talking about foundational elements here.
We're talking about Torah mitzvahs.
If you want to use your bridge analogy, you're talking about, are you going to paint a rose or a triangle on the entrance to the bridge? Does it really matter? Is that really affecting the bridge?
No, but by Torah it says this will affect the bridge, because it's not painting a rose or a triangle, it's doing what you're not allowed to on Shabbos. That aspect of it is fundamental. Yeah, that's fundamental, because you make a fence that people shouldn't come, God forbid, to do something which is suicide, spiritual death. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. So okay.
Would there be capital punishment if a person was warned not to do that?
No, because it's only rabbinic. There's no capital punishment on that. We're talking here rabbinic prohibitions that somebody shouldn't come, God forbid, to do something biblical. You don't let people, if you have a big manhole in the street.
So what would be the biblical? What would be the cardinal?
If you tear with the intent of constructive, not destructive, that would be biblical. So therefore you can't do all these things, because you might come to do it, or somebody will make a mistake and think that if I could do this, then I can tear. What?
Tear your papers.
One second.
Application of the measurements for medicine for a child, 2 teaspoons, with that.
So normally, I think we did cover it a little bit. The answer to your question is, you can't measure on Shabbos, but measuring for medicine you could.
It's not like
mitzvah, or medicine, if it's not life endangering. Because again, measuring is a rabbinic decree. So therefore, the Chacham who made the decree said, if it's measuring for a mitzvah, if the matzah weighs a kazayas, or if the mikveh has enough water in it, or things like that, you're allowed to. Or if it's for medicinal purposes.
If you pair the aluminum foil, is it both pairing the halacha and also measuring both? You separating both, or is it one of the...
It's part of the same halacha. Machin so meisem mein kim shibla gal teda and then makashe medat gebor zak so